My name is Elias Granger, and I'm 55 years old. For the past 18 years, I've been running Granger Digital Security, the company my father built from the ground up here in Portland, Oregon. We specialize in cybersecurity solutions for Fortune 500 companies, and our reputation in the Pacific Northwest is solid as granite. My analytical mind and ability to anticipate problems have always been my greatest assets in both business and life. I thought I had a good marriage with Ivy. We'd been together since I was 37, and she seemed to embrace the family business and everything that came with it. Our two kids, Michael, 17, and Emily, 15, were the center of our world. Or at least, I thought they were the center of mine. My father had been battling pancreatic cancer for 8 months. The doctors at OHSU had given us the timeline, and we all knew the end was coming. Dad had always treated Ivy like his own daughter, and I could see how much his approval meant to her throughout our marriage. That's why what happened at his funeral hit me like a freight train. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video, and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. The memorial service was held at Powell Butte Cemetery on a gray October morning. The whole tech community in Portland showed up to pay their respects. Dad had mentored half the cybersecurity professionals in the city, and our company's clients sent representatives from as far as San Francisco and Seattle. I was still standing by the graveside, watching the casket being lowered, when Ivy approached me with an envelope in her hands. Her timing couldn't have been worse, but looking back, I think that was exactly the point. "Elias," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I need you to sign these." I opened the envelope and my blood ran cold. Divorce papers, right there with dirt still clinging to my shoes from my father's grave. "Are you serious right now?" I asked, keeping my voice low. People were still milling around, offering condolences. "The timing isn't ideal, but this needed to happen," she replied. "According to your father's will, the family assets transferred to me as the surviving daughter-in-law. My attorney says it's ironclad." Before I could process what she was really saying, Michael and Emily walked up behind her. My own children looked at me with expressions I'd never seen before, cold, almost disgusted. "Dad, we've made our decision," Michael announced loud enough for several family friends to hear. "We're changing our last name to Reed. Mom's new partner has offered us opportunities you never could." Emily nodded in agreement. "We want to live with Mom and Arthur. He understands us better than you ever did." Arthur Reed, my business partner of 7 years. The man I'd trusted with access to our most sensitive client data and financial systems. Standing there in my black suit, surrounded by mourners, I felt something inside me shift. Not anger. Anger is hot and impulsive. This was something colder, more calculating. The same methodical thinking that had built our cybersecurity empire was now turning its full attention to this betrayal. What Ivy didn't know was that I'd been watching this betrayal unfold for months. When you run a cybersecurity company, you develop certain instincts about deception and unusual patterns. And Ivy's behavior had been setting off alarm bells since early spring. It started with small things. She'd become protective of her phone, angling the screen away when texting. She started working late at her marketing job more frequently, but when I called her office, her assistant would say she'd left hours earlier. There were unexplained charges on our joint credit card, dinners at expensive restaurants downtown when she claimed to be home with a headache. But the real red flag was Arthur. He'd joined our company 3 years after we expanded into corporate consulting. Arthur was smooth, charming, and had an MBA from Stanford. He specialized in business development and had legitimate skills. But over the past 6 months, he'd been asking questions about our financial structure that went beyond his pay grade. "Hey, Elias," he'd casually mentioned during meetings, "I've been thinking about the company's asset allocation. How much of our liquid capital is tied up in that Portland real estate portfolio your dad assembled?" Or he'd drop by my office and say, "Your father was brilliant with those early investments. I bet the family trust is worth more than the business itself now, right?" At the time, I thought he was just making conversation. Now I understood he was conducting reconnaissance. The breakthrough came in July when our IT department flagged unusual access patterns in our system. Someone had been accessing client files and financial records outside normal business hours. The digital forensics were clear. It was Arthur's login credentials, but the access times coincided with evenings when he should have been home. That's when I started my own quiet investigation. I hired a private investigator named Marcus Webb, a former FBI agent who specialized in corporate espionage cases. Within 2 weeks, Marcus had photographic evidence of Ivy and Arthur meeting at the Heathman Hotel in downtown Portland, not once, but multiple times over several months. But the real bombshell came when Marcus discovered they'd been meeting with a probate attorney named Victoria Steinberg. She had a reputation for finding creative interpretations of inheritance law, particularly in cases involving blended families and complex business structures. I realized they weren't just having an affair. They were planning a complete takeover. My father's will did include a provision that seemed to benefit Ivy, but it was contingent on specific circumstances that I knew hadn't been met. However, if they could manipulate the legal interpretation and gain control of both my personal assets and my shares in the company, they could effectively force me out of my own business. The manipulation of Michael and Emily was perhaps the cruelest part. Arthur had been positioning himself as the cool, understanding father figure. He'd take them shopping with his American Express black card, promising them cars when they turned 18. A BMW for Michael, a Mercedes C-Class for Emily. He painted a picture of private schools, college funds, and European vacations. "Your dad's too conservative with money," I overheard him telling Emily during a family barbecue in August. "When I have more influence over the family finances, you'll see what real opportunities look like." I documented everything. Every suspicious meeting, every financial irregularity, every conversation I could safely record. I consulted with my own attorney, Patricia Morrison, who specialized in business law and had handled several high-profile corporate fraud cases in the Pacific Northwest. "Elias," Patricia told me during a confidential meeting in September, "if they're planning what you think they're planning, they're going to have to commit several federal crimes to pull it off. Wire fraud, embezzlement, possibly even racketeering if they're coordinating this across state lines with business partners." But I couldn't act yet. My father was deteriorating rapidly, and any family scandal would have destroyed him emotionally in his final months. Dad loved Ivy genuinely. He'd walked her down the aisle at our wedding because her own father had passed away. He considered her the daughter he never had. So I waited, I watched, and I prepared. I quietly restructured my personal assets, moving money into accounts that Ivy couldn't access. I documented every irregularity in Arthur's behavior and preserved digital evidence of their conspiracy. Most importantly, I set up monitoring systems that would track any unauthorized attempts to access or transfer company funds. The hardest part was acting normal around my own family, sitting at dinner, listening to my children talk about their future plans, knowing they'd been poisoned against me. Watching Ivy play the devoted wife while she was planning to rob me blind. But patience is a virtue in cybersecurity. The best hackers always reveal themselves when they think they're safe. I just had to wait for Arthur and Ivy to make their move. The funeral was on Thursday. By Monday morning, Arthur and Ivy had made their first major mistake. I was sitting in my office at 7 a.m. reviewing quarterly reports when our CFO, Janet Kim, knocked on my door with a concerned expression. "Elias, we have a problem," she said, closing the door behind her. "Someone initiated a wire transfer authorization over the weekend for $2.3 million from our operating account to an offshore consulting firm I've never heard of." "Show me," I said, though I already knew what I'd find. The transfer request bore Arthur's digital signature and was dated for the previous Saturday, 2 days after my father's funeral. The receiving company was listed as Pacific Strategic Consulting LLC, registered in the Cayman Islands. "Janet, I need you to freeze all external transfers immediately and call our bank," I instructed. "Tell them we're conducting an internal audit and need a 48-hour hold on any transactions over $50,000. "Should I notify Arthur about the freeze?" she asked. "Not yet. Let's see how he reacts when he discovers it on his own. I didn't have to wait long. Arthur stormed into my office at 10:15 that morning, his usual composed demeanor completely gone. "Elias, what the hell is going on with our banking systems?" he demanded. "I have a time-sensitive consulting contract that needs to be funded today, and the bank is giving me some runaround about account freezes." "I'm not sure what you mean, Arthur," I replied calmly. "What kind of consulting contract requires a $2.3 million transfer to the Cayman Islands on a weekend?" His face went pale. He realized I knew. "It's a legitimate business expense for the Henderson Industries account," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We discussed expanding our Caribbean operations." "Did we? I don't recall that conversation. And Henderson Industries is based in Phoenix. Why would they need Cayman Islands consulting services?" Arthur left my office without another word. That afternoon, I called Patricia Morrison and told her it was time to move. By Wednesday, she had filed preliminary injunctions freezing all joint assets pending a forensic accounting investigation. More importantly, she'd contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division in Portland. The beautiful thing about financial fraud is that it always leaves a digital trail. And when you're married to someone who runs a cybersecurity company, that trail becomes very easy to follow. The forensic accountants discovered that Arthur and Ivy had been systematically siphoning money from our business for months. They'd created fake consulting contracts, inflated vendor invoices, and even set up phantom employees to collect paychecks. The total amount exceeded $800,000, which elevated their crimes to federal felony territory. But the most damning evidence came from their own communications. Remember those business phones our company provided? Everything was backed up to our secure servers. Every text message, every email, every phone call between Ivy and Arthur was preserved in perfect digital clarity. The transcripts were devastating. Ivy discussing how she'd played the grieving daughter-in-law perfectly to gain my father's trust. Arthur bragging about how easy it was to manipulate the old man's guilt about his son's long work hours. They even joked about my children, calling them useful idiots who would provide emotional leverage during the divorce proceedings. When Michael and Emily found out their mother and her boyfriend had referred to them that way, their attitude changed dramatically. Emily came to me crying one evening in November. "Dad, I found Mom's laptop open and saw some of the police reports," she sobbed. "Is it true what they're saying about her and Arthur stealing from the company?" "I'm afraid it is, sweetheart," I replied, pulling her into a hug. "But that's not your fault. You were manipulated by people you trusted." Michael was harder to reach, but when the FBI arrested Arthur at our office in front of several employees, the reality finally hit him. His hero worship of Arthur crumbled when he saw him in handcuffs on the local news. The Portland Business Journal ran a front-page story. Granger digital security executives charged an $800K embezzlement scheme. The article detailed how a trusted business partner and the company founder's daughter-in-law had systematically defrauded the family business while the patriarch was dying of cancer. Our clients, rather than abandoning us, rallied around the company. They saw the story as proof of our security expertise. After all, we'd caught the criminals using our own systems. Several new contracts came in within weeks of the arrests. Ivy's assets were frozen, including the house she'd assumed would be hers through the inheritance manipulation. She had to move in with her sister in Beaverton and take a job at a call center to pay for her legal defense. Arthur lost his Stanford MBA credentials when the fraud conviction went on his record. No reputable company in the tech industry would hire him. Last I heard, he was selling insurance in Spokane. The probate court ruled that Ivy's actions constituted financial elder abuse against my father, which automatically disqualified her from receiving any inheritance benefits. The family trust remained exactly as my father had intended, protecting the business and providing for his grandchildren's education. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came 6 months later, when both Ivy and Arthur were sentenced at the federal courthouse in Portland. Judge Sarah Chen sentenced Arthur to 4 years in federal prison and ordered him to pay $850,000 in restitution. Ivy received 3 years and was ordered to pay an additional $400,000 in damages for her role in the conspiracy. The federal prosecutor called it one of the most callous cases of financial elder abuse she'd seen in 20 years on the bench. I sat in the gallery and watched as they were led away in shackles. I felt no satisfaction, no sense of revenge fulfilled. Just a quiet acknowledgement that justice had run its natural course. The most profound change came in my relationship with Michael and Emily. The truth about their mother's manipulation had shattered their worldview, but it also opened the door for honest conversations we'd never had before. "Dad, how did you stay so calm through all of this?" Michael asked me one evening as we worked together in my home office, reviewing his college applications. He'd decided to study computer science at Oregon State, wanting to eventually join the family business. "Son, when someone betrays your trust, you have 2 choices," I explained. "You can react emotionally and make mistakes, or you can think strategically and let their own actions destroy them. People who lie and steal always reveal their true nature eventually." Emily, now a senior in high school, had become interested in business law after watching the trial proceedings. She'd spend hours asking me questions about corporate governance and legal ethics. "Were you scared Mom would actually succeed?" she wondered. "Scared? No. Disappointed? Absolutely. But your grandfather taught me something important about business and life. Always keep detailed records and never act out of anger. Those lessons served me well." The company not only survived but thrived. Our reputation for catching internal fraud made us the go-to cybersecurity firm for companies concerned about insider threats. We landed contracts with Nike, Intel, and several major banks throughout the Pacific Northwest. Revenue increased by 40% in the year following the scandal. I promoted Janet Kim to Chief Operating Officer and hired 2 additional forensic accountants. We developed new internal security protocols that became industry standards. The Harvard Business Review even published a case study about our insider threat detection methodology. 3 years later, I received a letter from Ivy while she was serving her sentence at FCI Dublin in California. She claimed to be reformed, attending Bible study classes, and wanted to make amends. She asked if we could arrange supervised visits with the children. I showed the letter to Michael and Emily, now both in college. Their response was immediate and unanimous. "Dad, some bridges can't be rebuilt," Emily said firmly. "She made her choices and we've made ours." Michael nodded. "We have a family business to run together. That's our future, not dwelling on her mistakes." I was proud of their maturity and wisdom. Arthur wrote several letters too, mostly trying to blame his actions on financial pressure and claiming he never meant to hurt the family. I threw them away without reading past the first paragraph. Some people never accept responsibility for their choices. Today, Granger Digital Security employs over 200 people and has offices in Portland, Seattle, and San Francisco. Michael graduated summa cum laude from Oregon State and now heads our threat analysis division. Emily finished her business degree at University of Oregon and runs our legal compliance department. We've created a scholarship fund in my father's name for students studying cybersecurity and business ethics. It's awarded annually to young people who demonstrate both technical skill and moral character. The combination Dad always said was essential for lasting success. Last month, we celebrated the company's 30th anniversary with a reception at the Portland Art Museum. Clients, employees, and industry colleagues gathered to honor my father's legacy and the business he built with integrity and hard work. As I stood at the podium, looking out at the faces of people who trusted us with their most sensitive data and financial security, I realized something important. The betrayal that began at my father's funeral had ultimately strengthened everything he'd worked to build. Ivy and Arthur thought they could steal our legacy through deception and manipulation. Instead, their actions proved that legitimate success comes from patience, preparation, and principled decision-making. My father always said that character isn't built during good times. It's revealed during the worst times. The worst betrayal of my life became the foundation for the best years of my family's business. Some people might call what happened revenge, but I prefer to think of it as accountability. When you run a company built on trust and security, you learn that the truth always surfaces eventually. You just have to be patient enough to let it happen naturally. Today, when young entrepreneurs ask me for business advice, I always tell them the same thing my father told me. Keep meticulous records, trust but verify, and never let emotions override good judgment. Those principles will protect you from betrayal and position you for lasting success. The Granger name still means something in Portland's business community. It means integrity, reliability, and the kind of methodical thinking that builds generational wealth. That's a legacy worth protecting, and I'm proud to pass it on to Michael and Emily. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to receive alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.